And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Thursday morning's flying weather showing a big area of IFR coming into the western interior associated with that frontal system out there in the storminess out over the Bering Sea. IFR extending from the western Brooks Range here all the way down into Bristol Bay, starting to push in toward Kodiak Island and westward there across the eastern Aleutians. And IFR even showing up now along the southern slopes of the eastern Brooks Range with areas of marginal VFR over the southeast interior, North Gulf Coast on into the Panhandle. And for the southeast coast tomorrow afternoon, becoming VFR all the way up until you get to Yakutat, marginal VFR there westward across Prince William Sound, and areas of IFR now over south central Alaska. And still some IFR out here over the western interior from, just north of Togiak there across the Kuskokwim Delta all the way up to the Brooks Range and eastward along the southern slopes of the Brooks Range over toward Arctic Village. And some VFR now for the North Slope and Arctic Coast. A lot of marginal VFR over the Bering Sea, Alaska Peninsula, and the Aleutians. And then for Friday morning, still have the lower flying conditions here over the western part of the state and along and just south of the Brooks Range there, but well into the Koyukuk, Kobuk valleys. And a little bit of IFR here down to the Aleutian Range, but marginal VFR Bristol Bay, right on up into Nunivak Island. And improving VFR in northern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island, marginal for the Aleutians. And some VFR there showing up for the Kodiak Island area, especially to the east and north. But Cook Inlet to Prince William Sound, marginal IFR there from about Cordova eastward to Yakutat. Northern Panhandle, marginal, but a good portion of the southern southeast coast, VFR. And then that marginal VFR rolls all the way down to Dixon Entrance for Friday afternoon with IFR here from about Wrangell or Petersburg or so, right on up into Juneau, Lincoln Glacier Bay, along the North Gulf Coast there across Yakutat to the possibly the Wrangell Mountains. Marginal VFR with a little bit of VFR here, especially Cook Inlet, Western Kenai Peninsula at Fognak Island. Otherwise, pretty marginal over the interior for the afternoon with IFR here in northern Koyukuk Valley into the Brooks Range. But improving VFR, much of the Bering Sea into the west coast areas, Seward Peninsula, all the way down to the Pribilof, southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians, including the Alaska Peninsula here, looking pretty marginal. For the passes, Anatuvik and Adigan, IFR for the day on Thursday. Lake Clark and Mare also IFR in the forecast, as well as rainy, windy. Isabel, though, marginal VFR, and Mentasta, marginal VFR. Tanita, marginal VFR to IFR at times throughout the day on Thursday. And for Portage, marginal VFR early, becoming IFR as the day wears on. And for Chilkoot and White, looking good, VFR. Freezing levels here at the surface just off the North Gulf Coast, down across the western Panhandle. But warmer air coming up with that persistent southwesterly flow, 2,000 feet right up into the Bristol Bay area, actually into the Kuskokwim Bay, 6,000 to 8,000 feet here over the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. And from there, icing, big area of isolated moderate to considerable moderate. The considerable moderate here in the more orange shaded areas over the western part of the state and from the Kodiak Island just south of the Alaska Peninsula, this along in advance of the main frontal boundary, and that gradually shifting eastward throughout the day into the east central interior areas, and some lingering icing possibilities, mixed icing there for the southern Panhandle. And for the jet stream here, southwest flow, west-southwest, 155 knots, turning northwest and then northerly at about 110 knots there from the Panhandle, central northern Panhandle on down to the south, and 3,000 feet, good westerly flow here coming around this low up over the right near just north of the Bering Strait. So westerly 75 knots there across the southeast Bering Sea into the Alaska Peninsula, as well as the eastern Aleutians. Southwest 60 to 65 knots here, central eastern part of the state. Light for the Panhandle, 3,000 feet. Light winds also for the southeast coast. with northerlies of 45 knots over the northwest Bering Sea, turning westerly at about 60 knots there from the southwest coast across the Pribilof Islands, blowing in toward Bristol Bay, and southerlies 40 to 45 knots over the central and western interior, all the way up to the eastern Arctic coast. And turbulence. Considerable amount of turbulence here over a big area tomorrow, along and in the lee of the Alaska Range, where those high wind warnings are out. And from the Brooks Range all the way down into Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, all the way west to about Adak or Atka.